The smell of the sweet potato pies filled the car. Two of them, sitting on the back seat, carefully buckled in like grandchildren. The cinnamon and nutmeg were a warm, sweet promise, a scent I had carried with me for 60 years of Thanksgivings. It was the scent of my mother's kitchen, and her mother's before that. It was the scent of home, the real one, not the one I was driving toward. 8 hours. The highway was a long gray ribbon unwinding in front of me, bordered by the skeletal trees of late November. I had left my house before the sun was up, the air crisp and cold, tasting of frost. I'd made my tea, black with a sliver of lemon, and drank it standing by the kitchen window, watching the dark sky soften to a bruised purple. The ritual was a comfort. It was a small quiet anchor in a day that I knew would be unmoored. My son James had called a week before. His voice was always rushed, as if he were fitting me in between important meetings. "Mom, you're still coming for Thanksgiving, right? Brenda's got everything planned." Planned. That was Brenda's word for everything. Life was a series of scheduled events, to be executed with maximum efficiency and minimal emotional mess. She planned parties, she planned vacations, she planned her children's lives. I had a feeling she had my eventual decline and death planned out on a color-coded spreadsheet somewhere on her sleek silver laptop. Of course, son. I wouldn't miss it. I had said it because it was what I was supposed to say. It was the line written for the character of mother in the play of their lives. Great. Don't bring too much stuff. The house is already crowded. He'd said it as if I were in the habit of arriving with a caravan of luggage. I usually brought one small overnight bag and my pies. The pies were non-negotiable. They were my contribution, my signature. The one piece of our family's history that I could place on their modern granite countertop. A history they seemed determined to forget. The last 4 hours of the drive were the hardest. My back began to ache, a dull throb that settled deep in my bones. I thought of my husband, Robert. He would have been driving. He would have had his gospel music playing, not loud, just a low rumbling comfort from the speakers. Mahalia Jackson, maybe. He would have reached over and squeezed my hand as we got closer, his palm warm and calloused. "Almost there, Elara," he would have said. But Robert had been gone for 10 years now. The passenger seat was just a space filled with my purse and the silence of his absence. I remembered the Thanksgivings we used to host. Our house, small and filled with the scent of turkey and greens and Robert's laughter. James would be there, and later after he married, Brenda would be there too. In the beginning she had tried. She would ask for my recipes, her pen scratching against a notepad, though she never seemed to get them quite right. Her cornbread was always too sweet, her greens too bland. Eventually she stopped asking. Then they started hosting. It was easier, they said. More space for the kids. My house was too small, too old-fashioned, too much like me. I pulled into their long curved driveway just as the sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky in shades of pale orange and pink. Their house was a large 2-story affair with big windows and no soul. It looked like a picture from a magazine, a place where people were posed, not where they lived. I could see the lights on inside, golden and warm, but I felt a chill creep over my skin. I sat in the car for a moment, gathering myself. I unbuckled the pies first, lifting them carefully. They were still warm. I balanced them both, one on top of the other, and made my way to the front door, my overnight bag slung over my other shoulder. The door swung open before I could ring the bell. It was Brenda. She was dressed in a cream-colored sweater and pants that were probably more expensive than my entire monthly budget. She had a strained smile on her face. "Elara, you made it." Her voice had the bright, brittle quality of someone trying to sound welcoming when they felt anything but. "Hello, Brenda." The traffic wasn't too bad. I held out the pies. "I brought dessert." She looked at the pies as if I had handed her a box of live snakes. "Oh, you shouldn't have. I have a caterer." They did a deconstructed pumpkin tart with a ginger cardamom crumble. Deconstructed. I hated that word. It meant taking something whole and good and breaking it into pieces for no reason at all. I felt a little deconstructed myself in that moment. "Well," I said, my voice steady, "a sweet potato pie never hurt anyone." I stepped past her into the house. The air was filled with the sound of chatter and the clinking of glasses. It was loud and chaotic. I saw my grandchildren, 10-year-old Maya and 12-year-old Leo, glued to a giant television screen, their fingers flying over video game controllers. They didn't look up. James came out of the living room, a glass of wine in his hand. He gave me a quick one-armed hug, his cheek barely brushing mine. It smelled of expensive soap and wine. "Mom, glad you're here. Grab a drink. Mingle. Mingle." As if I were a distant colleague from his office. I put the pies on the kitchen counter, finding a small space between a silver ice bucket and a platter of fancy cheeses I couldn't name. I looked around. There were faces I didn't recognize. Brenda's friends, I presumed. They were all loud and laughing, dressed in clothes that looked casually expensive. I felt like a relic, a piece of old furniture someone had forgotten to put in storage. My simple dress and comfortable shoes were out of place among the cashmere and leather. I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the counter watching. No one spoke to me. I was invisible. A ghost in a house that was supposed to be my son's home. After about 20 minutes of standing there, my feet starting to hurt, Brenda clapped her hands together. The sound was sharp like a gunshot. "Okay, everyone. Dinner is served. Let's find our seats." People began to move toward the dining room. There was a long, beautifully set table, gleaming with polished silver and crystal glasses. There were little white cards with names written in elegant script at each place setting. I looked for mine. I walked the length of the table once, then again. My name wasn't there. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I turned and saw James directing people to their seats. I walked over to him, feeling small. "James," I said, my voice quiet. "I don't see my name." He didn't look at me. He was busy pointing one of Brenda's friends to a chair. "Oh, right. Mom," he finally turned, but his eyes darted over my shoulder, already looking for the next task. We ran out of room at the main table. There were just so many people this year. Brenda appeared at his side, her smile even more strained than before. "We set up a little spot for you. It will be fun." She pointed, and I saw it. In the far corner of the living room, near the sliding glass door that led to the dark patio, was a small square card table. It was covered with a paper tablecloth decorated with cartoon turkeys. There were plastic cups and paper plates. Next to it was a child's booster seat and a high chair. It was the kids' table. My grandchildren, Maya and Leo, were already there, their eyes still fixed on the television, shoveling mashed potatoes into their mouths without looking down. Brenda's voice was a cheerful whisper, meant to sound conspiratorial and kind. "You can sit at the kids' table. You can help me keep an eye on them." I looked at her. I looked at my son. James had the grace to look uncomfortable for a fraction of a second, his eyes meeting mine before flicking away. He cleared his throat. "It's just for dinner, Mom. We'll all have dessert together in the living room." But he and I both knew that was a lie. After dinner, the men would watch football, and the women would cluster in the kitchen, and I would be left to sit on a sofa, watching the grandchildren who were too old to need watching and too engrossed in their own worlds to notice me. I looked back at the card table, the paper tablecloth, the plastic forks. I thought of the 8-hour drive. I thought of the 2 sweet potato pies on the counter, made with the recipe my grandmother had taught me, her hands guiding mine. I thought of Robert, and how he would have taken my arm and walked us right out that door without a single word. Something inside me shifted. It wasn't a loud shattering break. It was a quiet click. The sound of a lock turning, of a door closing. The part of me that had been waiting for them to see me, to value me, to simply make a space for me at their table, it went still. It went silent. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. That was what they expected. They expected a scene or a guilt trip, or a sad martyred acceptance. They were prepared for that. They were not prepared for my silence. I gave them a small, calm smile. It didn't reach my eyes. I'm not sure what my eyes looked like in that moment. Empty, perhaps. "All right," I said. My voice was even. It sounded like someone else's. I turned and walked back into the kitchen. I picked up my purse from the counter where I'd left it. I took out my car keys. I didn't look at the pies. They didn't belong here. Then I walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped out into the cold night air. I closed the door softly behind me. I did not slam it. The cold was a shock, but it felt clean. It cleared my head. I walked to my car, my movements deliberate and unhurried. I got in, started the engine, and backed slowly out of their long curved driveway. I didn't look back at the house, at the golden windows filled with people who had no room for me. I drove. Not toward home. Just away. The streets of the manicured suburb were quiet and empty. Everyone was inside with their families at their tables. I drove until the big, soulless houses gave way to smaller, older ones, and then to a commercial strip. I saw the warm, inviting light of a restaurant. It was called the Corner Bistro. It looked like a family place. Simple. Unpretentious. I parked the car and went inside. The hostess, a young woman with a kind smile, greeted me. "Table for one?" "Yes," I said. "Just one." She led me to a small booth in the back. The restaurant was about half full. There were families. A young couple on a date. A group of older friends laughing. The air smelled of roasting chicken and garlic bread. Smelled real. The waitress came over. Her name tag said Maria. She looked tired but her eyes were bright. "What can I get for you, hon?" "I'll just have a cup of black tea with lemon, please." I wasn't hungry. The knot in my stomach was still there, hard and tight. She brought the tea. I held the warm mug in my hands, the heat seeping into my cold fingers. And I watched. I watched the family in the booth across from me. A mother, a father, 2 young children. The father was cutting his son's food. The mother was wiping her daughter's face with a napkin. Her movements full of a gentle, automatic love. I watched the table of older women, their faces lined with laughter and life, sharing a bottle of wine. I watched the young couple, their heads bent close together, speaking in low, intimate tones. This was family. This was connection. It wasn't about polished silver or deconstructed tarts. It was about making room. It was about showing up and being seen. I drank my tea, and the quiet click I'd felt in my son's house echoed in my soul. It was a decision. It was a final, irrevocable turning of a page. When Maria came back to refill my water, I stopped her. "Excuse me," I said. "I have a strange request." She smiled. "I've heard them all, hon. Try me. I would like to pay for everyone's meal. Everyone in the restaurant." Her smile faltered. She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. She saw the lines on my face, the gray in my hair, the solitude of my booth. She was probably looking for signs of confusion, of dementia. My voice was firm. "I'm perfectly serious. I want to buy everyone here their Thanksgiving dinner. Anonymously. Just bring me the total bill for every table." She hesitated for a moment, then seemed to see the resolve in my eyes. She nodded slowly. "Okay. Let me go talk to my manager." She came back a few minutes later with a slip of paper. The number on it was large but not impossible. It was less than what James and Brenda had probably spent on their caterer. I took out my credit card, the one I kept for emergencies. This, I decided, was an emergency of the soul. I signed the slip. I added a generous tip for the staff. For Maria. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft with a kind of wonder. "No one's ever done this before." "It's my pleasure," I said. And it was. It was a strange, clean pleasure. It wasn't about them. It wasn't revenge. It was about me. It was about taking a space that had been full of hurt and filling it with a small, anonymous act of grace. It was about creating a moment of warmth in a world that had just shown me its coldness. It was my Thanksgiving. I stood up to leave. As I walked toward the door, I heard the manager announcing to the restaurant what had happened. A ripple of surprised murmurs and then a smattering of applause broke out. I didn't turn around. I slipped out the door before anyone could see me. Back in my car, the silence was different. It wasn't empty anymore. It was peaceful. I didn't drive home. The thought of my empty house was too much to bear. I drove until I saw a motel, a simple, clean-looking place with a glowing red sign that just said, "Vacancy." I paid for a room for the night. The room was plain. A bed, a small desk, a television bolted to the wall. The bedspread was a scratchy synthetic material, but it was a space that was entirely my own. It asked nothing of me. I unpacked my small bag, my nightgown, my toothbrush, my Bible. I washed my face in the small, clean bathroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror. I looked old. I looked tired, but my eyes were clear. I sat on the edge of the stiff bed. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was James. I watched his name flash on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later it buzzed again. A text message. Mom, where are you? I deleted it. Not replied. Deleted. It buzzed again. Brenda. I let her call go to voicemail too. Then another text. Elara, this isn't funny. We're worried. Worried. They weren't worried when they were shunting me off to a card table like a piece of unwanted luggage. They were annoyed. My departure was an inconvenience. It was a crack in the perfect facade of their planned evening. It was a social embarrassment. I turned the phone off. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a blessing. I took the small notepad and pen from the motel desk. The pen was cheap plastic and wrote in a thin, scratchy blue line. I opened to the first page. The paper was crisp. I wrote 3 words at the top of the page. My new life. Underneath I started a list. 1. Lawyer. 2. Bank. 3. Realtor. I looked at the words. They looked solid. They looked real. They were the first bricks in the foundation of whatever came next. I didn't know what it would be, but I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my spirit that it would be mine. That night, for the first time in a long time, I slept without dreaming. The next morning, I woke up with the thin motel curtains doing a poor job of blocking the morning sun. My body ached from the unfamiliar bed, but my mind felt rested, clear. The hollow ache in my chest that had been my constant companion for years was gone. In its place was a quiet, steady hum of purpose. I made coffee using the sad little machine in the room. It was weak and tasted of plastic, but it was hot. I sat in the lumpy armchair and turned my phone back on. A cascade of notifications appeared. 10 missed calls. 15 text messages. I read them with a detached curiosity, as if I were reading about someone else's family. From James, Mom, seriously call me. This is childish. From Brenda. Your pies are still here. I hope you're happy you've ruined Thanksgiving. From James. Are you okay? Did something happen? We're calling the police if we don't hear from you. The threat was empty. They wouldn't call the police. That would involve admitting to others that their perfect family had a flaw, that the quiet, accommodating mother had simply walked away. It would require an explanation they did not have. I deleted them all. Every last one. The act of pressing the little trash can icon over and over was deeply satisfying. It was a digital cleansing. Then I saw a name that made me pause. Imani. My granddaughter. Not from James and Brenda. From her own phone. One text. Grandma, are you okay? I'm so sorry about last night. What they did was wrong. Please just let me know you're safe. Imani. My sweet girl. She was 14, caught in that awkward space between child and adult, but her heart had always been true. She saw things. While her younger siblings were lost in their digital worlds, Imani watched. I remembered the look on her face when Brenda had pointed to the card table. A flash of shame, of anger on my behalf. She had looked at me, her eyes wide with apology, before her father had shooed her to her seat. My fingers, stiff with age, typed out a reply. I am safe, my love. And I am okay. More than okay. I will call you soon. I love you. I hit send. Felt like launching a lifeboat. I looked at the list I had made the night before. Lawyer. Bank. Realtor. It was time to begin. It was Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. Most places would be closed, but I could do my research. I spent the morning in that motel room with my phone, searching for lawyers in my hometown. Not just any lawyer. I needed someone who specialized in estate planning, someone with a reputation for being sharp and discreet. I found a firm run by 3 women. Their photos on the website showed them to be professional, no nonsense. One of them, Allison Peters, had a biography that mentioned her work with elder advocacy groups. I wrote her name down on my notepad. Allison Peters. Felt right. Then I looked up my bank. I found the direct number for the branch manager, a Mr. Henderson, whom I had met a few times over the years. A kind, balding man who always remembered my name. I would need to see him in person. Finally, the realtor. This was the hardest part. Selling my house. The house Robert and I had bought 45 years ago. The house where we raised James. The house where every wall, every floorboard, held a memory. The scent of Robert's pipe tobacco still clung faintly to the curtains in his study. The pencil marks measuring James's height were still on the doorframe to the kitchen. Leaving the house felt like a betrayal of him, of the life we had built. But as I sat there in that sterile motel room, I realized the truth. The house wasn't a home anymore. It was a museum of a life that was over. I was the last lonely curator, dusting off memories that no one else wanted to visit. James hadn't set foot in it for more than an hour at a time in years. It was just Mom's house, a place to drop off Christmas gifts or pick up a forgotten childhood trophy he suddenly needed for a display in his office. To stay there would be to live in the past, to wait for people who were never going to truly come back. My new life needed a new home. A smaller one with no ghosts. I checked out of the motel. The 8-hour drive home was different this time. I wasn't driving toward an obligation. I was driving toward my future. I stopped at a grocery store and bought a simple roasted chicken, some bread, and a small container of potato salad. I played the radio, a station that played old Motown and blues. I sang along with the Temptations and Etta James. My voice was rusty, but it was mine. When I got home, the house felt cavernous and silent. The air was stale. I opened a few windows, letting the cold November air rush in. It needed the fresh air. So did I. I made my simple dinner and ate it at my small kitchen table, the one Robert and I had shared for thousands of meals. It didn't feel sad. It felt peaceful. On Monday morning, I called Allison Peters's office. Her assistant had a warm professional voice. I made an appointment for Wednesday. One step taken. Next, the bank. I drove downtown and walked into the quiet, marbled hall of the bank. Mr. Henderson was there. He saw me and his face broke into a genuine smile. "Mr. Henderson," I said, extending my hand. "Ms. Elara, it is so good to see you. How can I help you today?" "I need to make some changes to my accounts," I said. "In private, if possible." He led me back to his glass-walled office and closed the door. I sat down, my purse in my lap. I took a deep breath. I would like to have my son James removed from all of my accounts, the checking, the savings. He is currently listed as a joint owner. Mr. Henderson's professional smile didn't waver, but a flicker of something, concern maybe, passed through his eyes. "Of course. We can certainly do that. It will just require your signature on a few forms. And my power of attorney," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "James is listed as my durable power of attorney. I want that revoked. Immediately. That's a legal document, Ms. Elara. You'll likely need to have a new one drawn up by your lawyer to formally supersede it. But we can certainly put a note on your file here that it is your expressed wish to have it voided, and that no transactions are to be authorized by him." "Good," I said. "That's what I want." He slid the forms across the desk to me. I signed my name, Elara Vance. The loops and swirls of my signature looked stronger than I felt. Each stroke of the pen was a small act of liberation. "One more thing," I said, sliding the signed forms back to him. "I'd like to set up a trust. I have an appointment with a lawyer on Wednesday to make it official, but I want to begin the process here. A trust for my granddaughter, Imani Vance." Mr. Henderson finally allowed himself a small, personal smile. "She's a lovely girl. I remember when you brought her in to open her first savings account. She was so proud of that little passbook." "She is," I said, the words catching in my throat. "She's a very good girl." I left the bank feeling lighter than I had in a decade. The sun seemed brighter. The air felt cleaner. I had taken back control. It was that simple and that profound. When I got home, my phone rang. It was Imani. I answered immediately. "Grandma." Her voice was hesitant. "I'm here, baby." "Oh, thank God." I could hear the relief flood her voice. "I was so worried. Dad and Mom they're freaking out. They keep saying you're not answering your phone." "I needed some quiet, that's all." There was a pause. Then she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I saw Grandma. I saw the table. It was horrible. I wanted to say something, but Dad gave me this look. I'm so sorry." Tears pricked my eyes. The first tears I had allowed myself to feel since it happened. Not tears of self-pity. Tears of gratitude. to be seen, to be validated. It was a precious gift. It's not your fault, Imani. You don't have to be sorry for their behavior. But I am. I'm part of this family. You are the best part of it, I said, and I meant it. Listen to me, love. Some things are going to be changing, but my love for you will never be one of them. You and I were fine. We are solid. Okay, Grandma, she whispered. I love you. I love you too, sweet girl. More than you know. We talked for a little while longer about her school, about a book she was reading. It was a normal, loving conversation. It was the kind of conversation I had been starving for. When we hung up, I felt a deep, abiding peace settle over me. I had my ally. I was not alone in this. On Wednesday, I met with Allison Peters. Her office was on the top floor of an old, renovated building downtown. It was decorated in warm colors, with comfortable chairs and shelves filled with books. She was a tall, elegant woman about my son's age, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She listened, truly listened, as I told her the story. I didn't tell her all of it. I didn't tell her about the decades of small slights, the slow erosion of my place in their lives. I didn't need to. I just told her what happened on Thanksgiving, and I told her what I wanted to do. I see, she said when I finished. Her voice was calm and measured. She didn't offer pity or outrage. She offered competence. So, to be clear, you want to revoke the current power of attorney. You want to create a new will that bypasses your son entirely. And you want to create a living trust with your granddaughter Imani as the sole beneficiary upon your death. That's correct. And you're planning to sell your home? Yes. I want to buy a small condominium. Something manageable. The proceeds from the sale of the house, after the purchase of the new place, I want them to go into the trust as well. She nodded, making notes on a legal pad. Her penmanship was strong and clear. This is all very straightforward, Miss Vance. But I have to ask, are you certain? These actions are definitive. I looked her straight in the eye. I have never been more certain of anything in my life, Mrs. Peters. She held my gaze for a long moment, and then a slow, respectful smile touched her lips. All right then, Elara. Let's get to work. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. There were papers to sign, realtors to interview, and decades of accumulated possessions to sort through. The house was the biggest challenge. Every object I picked up held a story. James's tiny bronzed baby shoes, a stack of Robert's old jazz records, a box of faded photographs. For the first few days it was agonizing. Each item felt like a piece of my own heart that I was being asked to discard. But then something shifted. I started to see the objects not as my memories but simply as things. Things that had belonged to a life I was leaving behind. I created 3 piles. Keep, donate, discard. The keep pile was small. My mother's quilt. Robert's favorite armchair. The family Bible. My collection of poetry books. Imani's finger paintings from when she was a little girl. The donate pile was large. Clothes I hadn't worn in years. Dishes for a family of 12 that I would never host again. Furniture that was too big for where I was going. The discard pile was the most difficult. It was for the things that were too personal to give away but too painful to keep. It was for the box of letters I had written to James when he was at summer camp. It was for the framed photo of him and Brenda on their wedding day, a photo in which I stood slightly off to the side, smiling hopefully. One afternoon while I was sorting through a box in the attic, my doorbell rang. My heart hammered in my chest. I knew who it was. I hadn't heard from them directly since that first barrage of texts and calls. I assumed they were trying a new tactic. The silent treatment, hoping I would come crawling back, full of apologies. But their patience had clearly run out. I walked down the stairs slowly, my hand steady. I looked through the peephole. It was them. James and Brenda standing on my porch looking impatient. I opened the door. Mom, James's voice was tight with frustration. Finally. Have you not been getting our calls? Brenda pushed past him. Elara, what is going on? We've been worried sick. You just disappeared. Do you have any idea how that made us look? There it was. The truth. Not their worry for me but their worry for their own image. I stayed in the doorway blocking their entry. I needed some time to myself. Time to yourself? James scoffed. For weeks. You had your phone off. We drove by the other day and saw a for sale sign in the yard. You're selling the house? Without even talking to us. This is my house, James, I said, my voice quiet but firm. My decisions about it are mine to make. This is the family home, he sputtered. This is my childhood home. You can't just sell it. The family that lived in this home is gone, James, I said, and the truth of it settled in the air between us, cold and hard. Robert is gone. You are grown and have your own home. I am all that's left of that family. And I am choosing to move on. Brenda stepped forward, her face a mask of practiced concern. Elara, we're worried about you. This isn't like you. Selling the house, not answering our calls. Are you feeling all right? Maybe you should see a doctor. We could find a nice facility for you. Somewhere you'd be more comfortable. Where people can look after you. A facility. Place to put me. To manage me. The final, neat solution on her color-coded spreadsheet. A cold, clean anger rose in me. It was not a hot, messy rage. It was a precise, diamond-hard clarity. I am feeling more all right than I have in years, Brenda, I said, looking directly at her. My mind is perfectly clear. I remember everything. I remember driving for 8 hours with 2 pies I baked for your family. I remember being told there was no room for me at your table. I remember you pointing to a card table with a paper tablecloth. I shifted my gaze to my son. And I remember you, James. I remember you standing right there, and hearing it and doing nothing. Saying nothing. The color drained from their faces. They had expected tears, arguments, confusion. They were not prepared for calm, unassailable facts. That's not. We were just trying to manage, Brenda stammered. There is nothing to manage, I said. There was only a choice to be made. A choice of whether to treat your mother with dignity or with dismissiveness. And you both made your choice. Now I have made mine. I stepped back and began to close the door. James put his hand out to stop it. Mom, wait. Let's just talk about this. There is nothing left to talk about, I said. I am busy. I am packing. I have a new life to build. And then I closed the door. I didn't slam it. I closed it gently, firmly until I heard the latch click into place. I turned the deadbolt. The sound was loud in the sudden silence of the house. I stood there for a long moment, my back against the door, listening to their muffled, angry voices on the porch, and then the sound of their car driving away too fast. I did not cry. I walked back up the stairs to the attic, my steps feeling lighter than they had in years. I had faced them. I had spoken my truth. And I was still standing. I was whole. The house sold quickly. I found a lovely 2-bedroom condominium in a quiet complex on the other side of town. It had a small balcony perfect for a gardenia plant, and a big window in the living room that let in the morning light. Moving day was exhausting and exhilarating. Imani came to help. She didn't say much about her parents. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough. She helped me unpack my books and arrange them on the shelves. She helped me hang the old quilt on the wall in my new bedroom, where it looked like a piece of modern art. It looks beautiful, Grandma, she said, her eyes shining. It feels like home, I replied, and I realized it was true. This small, clean space, filled only with the things I had chosen to keep, felt more like home than the big empty house had for a very long time. My new life settled into a quiet rhythm. I woke early. I drank my tea. I tended my gardenia. I read my books. I joined a quilting circle at the local community center. I made new friends, women my age whose laughter was easy and genuine. We talked about our children and grandchildren, yes, but we also talked about books and politics and the world. We talked about ourselves. I saw Imani every week. Sometimes we would go out for lunch. Sometimes we would just sit in my new living room and talk. I was learning about the young woman she was becoming, and she was learning about the woman I had always been underneath the roles of mother and grandmother. One afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail. It was a thick, cream-colored envelope. The handwriting on the front was James's. I recognized his messy and patient scrawl. I set it on my kitchen counter. For 2 days I didn't touch it. I walked past it, I looked at it, but I didn't open it. I wasn't afraid of what it said. I was simply considering. I was deciding whether or not its contents mattered to my new life. On the 3rd day, I made myself a cup of tea and sat down at my kitchen table. I opened the letter. It was long. Several pages. It was an apology. A real one. He wrote about his shame, about how he had let Brenda's ambition and social anxiety dictate how he treated me. He wrote about seeing the for sale sign and realizing what he had lost. He wrote about the silence, how my quiet dignity had been a louder rebuke than any shouting match could ever have been. I miss you, Mom, the last line read. I was wrong. I am so sorry. I would like a chance to earn my way back to a place at your table. I read the letter twice. The words were the ones I had longed to hear for years, but hearing them now felt different. They were not a cure. They were not a magic key that would unlock the past and make everything right. The damage had been done. The lock had been changed. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. I did not throw it away. But I did not reply. Not yet. He had asked for a chance to earn his way back. Earning takes time. Takes effort. Takes more than one letter. The door to my life was no longer wide open for him to walk through whenever he pleased. It was closed. But perhaps I thought it was not locked. Not anymore. He could knock. And I would decide if I wanted to answer. That evening as the sun set, casting a warm golden glow through my new window, I sat in Robert's old armchair, a book open in my lap. The scent of gardenias drifted in from the balcony. The silence in my small home was not the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of peace. The silence of a life that was finally and completely my own. I had found my place at the table. It was a table for one, and it was more than enough. It was a feast.